On the morning of September 1st, 1939, the world woke up to an ordinary sunrise. Shops opened, children walked to school, radios crackled with routine announcements. No one knew they were hearing the last quiet moments before a century would break. Because somewhere in the darkness, engines had already started. Somewhere on the Baltic coast, a battleship's guns were already trained on a city that wasn't at war. And somewhere in the skies above Poland, hundreds of bombers were rising into the air like a steel storm, aimed at a nation that had no idea what was coming. History has many days of tragedy, many days of horror, but only a few days when the entire world changes in a single hour. September 1st, 1939, was one of those days. It was the day the peace of Europe died, the day millions of people stepped unknowingly into the shadows of the deadliest conflict humanity has ever seen, the day World War II began. Just after 4:30 in the morning, Poland was quiet. In the city of Warsaw, people slept in their beds. Nurses prepared for another calm morning shift. Farmers turned beneath blankets, unaware that the sky above them was already full of nearly 100 German bombers. And then the world exploded. Warsaw became the first city bombed in World War II. No soldiers, no military targets, just civilians, wiped out without warning. Witnesses later said it didn't sound like bombs, it sounded like the sky ripping open. The attack lasted minutes, the destruction lasted decades. While the city burned hundreds of kilometers away, the German battleship Schleswig-Holstein began firing on the Polish garrison at Westerplatte. Shells slammed into Polish fortifications. The ground shook. Inside the barracks, Polish soldiers grabbed rifles, still half asleep, unaware they were fighting the opening battle of a global war. For millions of Poles, the day began like any other. For millions more, it would be their last sunrise. To understand why September 1st happened, you have to look at the mind of a man who believed he could rewrite Europe. Adolf Hitler had spent years convincing his people that Germany needed space, that Poland was weak, that conflict was inevitable. He gave speeches about destiny, about restoring greatness. He promised a quick and clean war, a war that would be over in weeks. But behind the speeches was something colder. A belief that Europe would not fight back. He thought Britain would protest but do nothing. He thought France would hesitate. He thought Poland would collapse in days. He believed the world would watch and allow him to carve up a sovereign nation. Hitler was wrong about many things, but on that day, he was terrifyingly right about one. The world was not ready to stop him. What happened next has been overshadowed by what came later, but it shouldn't be forgotten. Poland fought. They fought against overwhelming odds, against divisions of tanks that rolled like iron tides across their countryside, against bombers that erased entire towns from the map, against propaganda that painted them as aggressors, even while their cities burned. At Westerplatte, a tiny garrison of fewer than 100 soldiers held out for a week against thousands. In the sky, the Polish Air Force, outnumbered nearly 10-1, still managed to inflict heavy losses. Their pilots became legends, men who would later fight in the Battle of Britain and help save Europe. On the ground, civilians fled with whatever they could carry. Families tore apart in the chaos. Trains were bombed. Columns of refugees were strafed by fighter planes. Poland wasn't just attacked. It was overwhelmed, everywhere, at once. But what made it truly hopeless wasn't Germany. It was what happened next. 16 days after Germany crossed the western border, the Soviet Union crossed the eastern one. Poland was trapped between two giants, one promising tyranny, the other delivering it. The Red Army's entrance sealed Poland's fate. Two powers that claimed they hated each other had secretly agreed to carve the country in half. Poles called it being caught between the jaws of two wolves. There was no escape, no miracle counterattack, no rescue. By the end of September, the fighting ended, but the suffering had barely begun. On September 3rd, 2 days after the invasion, Britain and France declared war on Germany. But they didn't send troops, didn't launch offensives, didn't strike Germany's borders. Their armies stayed behind their lines. Their governments waited. Their people hoped the war would stay far away. This was the birth of what history calls the phony war, a war only on paper. For Poles, the betrayal was unbearable. They had trusted their allies. They had believed Europe would stand with them. Instead, their nation was torn apart while the world hesitated. It was a moment that shaped the next 6 years of conflict, because it taught Hitler something deadly. The world would not stop him. Not yet. Every war is measured in numbers, but September 1st cannot be captured in statistics alone. It's in the father who carried his daughter across a burning field, in the nurse who stayed behind to treat the wounded and never left the hospital ruins alive, in the soldier who fought until his bunker collapsed around him, in the pilot who looked down at his destroyed city and swore never to forgive what he saw. The invasion of Poland isn't just the beginning of World War II. It's the beginning of millions of stories that ended too soon. The beginning of nations torn apart, cultures destroyed, cities erased. The beginning of a darkness that would stretch across continents. A darkness that began in a single morning. If you trace the entire war, every explosion, every battle, every tragedy back to a single point, you always end up at the same place, September 1st, 1939. Because what started that day didn't stay in Poland. It spread to France, to Britain, to Russia, to Africa, to the Pacific. It shattered empires. It redrew borders. It killed tens of millions of people. The invasion didn't just destroy a country. It set fire to the entire world. And the most haunting truth is this: most of the people who stepped into that day did not know they were stepping into a war that would define the century. They woke up, made coffee, tended fields, opened shops. They were ordinary people, but history had already chosen them. So what really happened on September 1st, 1939? A nation was invaded, a world was transformed, and humanity crossed a line it could never uncross. Every war has a beginning, but some beginnings are so violent, so sudden, so total, they split time itself into a before and an after. Before September 1st, 1939, Europe believed peace was still possible. After September 1st, peace was only something to be rebuilt from the ashes. That morning wasn't just the start of a conflict. It was the end of an age. And even now, more than 80 years later, the world is still living in its shadow.